It's like I said last week, I'm taking a little break off our prophecy study to talk about politics because we've seen such massive changes in our government and political life that I think it's affected all of us. And I think we need to stop, as Christians, we need to stop letting it affect us. And we need to move beyond it. But it's a shock when things change to the degree that they have. And I think it's become a big part of people's conversations, and I think it's become a big part of people's lives. And unfortunately, as Christians, I think a spiritual life and a political life are not necessarily supposed to be, the same thing. However, we don't need to just take my opinion for it. Like I said, we should just actually look at what the Bible actually says. Okay, let's see if I can put that one. Okay, so we're gonna look up. We're gonna go to the book of John, chapter 18. We're gonna read verse 36. So Jesus answers, says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews, but now is my kingdom not from hence." So obviously Jesus himself would have overthrown Pontius Pilate in the Romans if he wanted to establish a worldly government, right?
Yeah, snap his fingers.
Yeah, he could have done it with a snap of his fingers. No, just like when his time wasn't there, when they came to when they arrested him on Passover, that wasn't the first time they tried to arrest him.
Right.
He literally teleported away from them at different events.
Right.
When it wasn't when the time wasn't come. So what's interesting is if you look at the biggest reason that the Jewish people did not recognize Jesus as the Messiah is that they were in fact looking for a political Messiah. They were looking for a king that would overpower the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's almost like the Christians know this and then believe he's going to be political at the end.
Right.
Now, somewhat of a rhetorical question. Did Jesus ever run for office?
Anyone?
No.
Because but would he have if he was into politics, or if he wanted us to be?
Yeah, and he obviously would have. Well, honestly, he would have won, but
He could have taken control.
he could have taken control.
Well, like him washing the disciples' feet as an act of service.
Mm-hmm.
He basically taught to lead as a servant.
Right.
And he basically, when he was talking about John the Baptist, he says, "Behold, they that are in soft clothing are in king's houses, but what you went out to see was a prophet."
Yeah.
So Jesus was actually drew a distinction between his prophet and a politician.
Yeah. True.
Okay. So did Jesus ever give any commandment to any of his followers to ever run for office or to be involved in politics? we know of at least one disciple that had a political background.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of who it is?
We could say Matthew.
Yep. Okay. Now, do you think Matthew was still a tax collector after he became a disciple?
No, it said he walked away from the job. He
Right.
left it all right there.
And then Paul was a member of the Pharisees, right?
Right.
So one thing that we can see is that the disciples of Jesus, if they did have a government affiliation, they relinquished it
Mm-hmm.
when they became disciples of Christ,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And he obviously never did give a commandment for anyone to get involved in government. Okay, so then what exactly did Jesus mean when he said that my kingdom is not of this world?
We say that the kingdom is. In another place, he says the kingdom of God is within you. It's the spiritual rebirth. Like you're recruiting. Like we're supposed to be ambassadors for Christ, or you're recruiting people to the other kingdom by converting their heart.
So we established last week that Christianity started to become a political thing in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
With what was then called the Christian Coalition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, but before that, when he says, how did Christians see themselves in relation to the world?
Separate.
So if we are to be separate from the world, does that mean that we should run for office?
Well, you can.
I'm going to get into this in greater detail later on with the questions, right? But if your kingdom is separate from this world, then that means that your values are different than the world. Your lifestyle is different than the world. How you feel about things is different from the world. What you consider meaningful in life is different than the world. Okay, now if you go back to, staying in John, if you go back to chapter 15, we got 7 verses that we're going to read. So obviously the what we're focusing on here on this study in relations to politics is separation from the world. So if you're a Christian, you're supposed to not be of the world. And so we're going to explore how that ties into politics. Okay, so starting in verse 18. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my sayings, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. If I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin, but now they have no cloak for their sin. He that hateth me hateth my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which none other man did, they had not had sin. But now have they both seen and hated both me and my Father. But this cometh to pass, that the word might be fulfilled, that is written in their law, they hated me without a cause. So can you win an election and be hated by the world?
Yeah.
Well, he's not hated by the entirety of it though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, you can't win a majority vote if the world hates you.
Right, so it's not a good marketing point if you say, okay, I want to I want to promote a campaign of someone that is hated by everybody else, right?
Right?
So was Jesus saying this to his disciples to prepare them to rule the world?
No, he was preparing them for persecution.
So was Jesus thinking that this is what would cause them to be in charge of the entire Roman Empire?
Doesn't sound like it.
How does what Jesus teach contradict what is necessary to be a world ruler?
Well, it's a complete contradiction because, like, if you're going to be elected ruler, then you have to understand what the people want, and then you have to come up with a platform that's going to appease them. You got to get them to like you.
Yeah, one thing I learned at a young age is a lot of success comes from compromise.
Yes.
And in my business, I feel like God gave me the ability to be honest in my work, because there was a time, like, they used to sell the material by the pound,
Mm-hmm.
and then everybody would lie about the pound. They sometimes wouldn't lie if it was an easy road to get the poundage out, but if it was a hard road, they would lie.
Yeah.
And even the state knew it. And then they would put these bids together, encouraging people to lie, to whoever would lie to be the lowest bid. And if someone told the truth, and then in the other industry that I was in, which is the same industry, the paving industry, you know, like, if you do an overlay, the prices are almost the same. But as soon as you start doing excavation work, doing things, and I'm sure in your industry it's the same thing. Like, the more detailed something is, the bigger the gap in prices.
Yeah. People like to leave out a lot of details and then say, "Oh, we didn't include that," and then we'll charge extra for it later.
Yeah, and then, like, to be a politician, you can't be 100% your authentic self if you know that you have an opinion that's going to disrupt.
Yeah, you have to compromise your conscience to get elected.
Right, and there's many people that haven't done that, that have lost some of their fame. Like Megyn Kelly, for instance, is not as big a name as she was because she.
Departed from her platform.
Right, and then, you know, people, you know, did on both the left and the right. She's done this.
Yeah.
And but before she did this, she was a, you know, household name, right?
Right.
And so if you're sometimes the word politician is synonymous with being disingenuous.
People pleaser.
Right. Okay, well, there's nothing about what Jesus says to that which you hear in the air, preach in the rooftops. He that confesses me before men, him will I confess before my Father which is in heaven. Like, there's not, you can't boldly proclaim the truth and
Be popular.
and be popular.
Yeah.
And unless you're the head of a military organization that's taking control of a government, if it's like anything remotely close to a democracy, even a half democracy, you have to compromise your values in order to win elections. Nobody actually genuinely believes in the platforms that they subscribe to 100%.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and the more honest politician will tell you that this is the will of his constituents.
Right. And in the Republican world, Mitch McConnell's just got done writing a book saying he held back a lot of his opinions because he didn't think it would help government.
Cause.
Right.
Yeah.
And okay, so if you then okay, so we get a couple of verses that back up this point. Okay, if you turn to Luke, it looks like it's 16, but it could be 11. Let's turn to Luke 16. Yeah, it is chapter 16. We're going to read verse 15. It says, and he said unto them, you are they which justify yourselves before men, but God knoweth your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed amongst men is an abomination in the sight of God. Okay, now if you turn to Matthew chapter 7, back on the Sermon on the Mount. Starting verse 13, it says, enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. So, once again, I was going to say not to beat the point of the ground, but maybe that's not true. Maybe to beat the point into the ground. Is the narrow path a good formula for winning an election?
Mathematically speaking, it's a terrible angle.
Right. I think when you look at the destruction of society from a Christian standpoint, like, we said people went from, after the church age, they went to fun and entertainment, to the primary focus being money, to the primary focus being what they're afraid of, what things they want to avoid, to now hating others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on every one of those things, you get locked into what's popular.
Yes.
In order for something to be entertaining, it's helpful if everybody finds it entertaining,
Yeah.
and everybody's enjoying it, right?
Right.
In order to make money on a product, let's say, you gotta have a product that everybody wants to buy. Like
Right.
Microsoft was in everybody's house. That's
Yeah.
how Bill Gates became the richest guy in the world during that time, right? And then on the avoidance, if you want people to like you and everyone's focusing on what they're afraid of, then you want to champion the causes that people are afraid of. And so the things that are popular are the things that nowadays people click on, people watch, people pay attention to, the things that create successful, and that's the same thing that happens in the world. That's how you become political.
Mm-hmm.
So now, because people are looking to popularity to justify their fears, to justify their identity, it's actually creating a lot of division, isolation, and creating hatred. But it also causes people to be more focused on politics, because then politics gives you an outlet for your hate, gives you an outlet for your fear, and it has some regulation over your money. It fits everything except for the entertainment, right? Although people tie it into entertainment too.
They can, yeah.
Yeah.
Once they get sarcastic.
Right, and so so the main point that if I beat it into the ground too much, is that as a Christian, you need to be looking for something that's different than the norm, different than what's popular. Need to be nuanced, need to be balanced. And so, in order to rule the world, you got to rule by a majority. So part of what made the world civil, when it was somewhat of a Christian world, a watered down version of Christianity, was what we had for politicians. And that wasn't really bad from a civil perspective, and they didn't really affect our personal lives. Now that the church is getting so involved in politics, and the politics have corrupted their values, we don't have this watered down Christianity in our political world anymore. It kind of left with the Bushes, and unfortunately, it's changing the fabric of our culture and of the Western world as a whole, because it doesn't even have a watered down version of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
It does have a little bit of Christian influence on it, though, in the way that it's structured. Okay. Okay, does the narrow path separate you from, actually, no, I skipped this. Does the narrow path separate you from sinners?
I mean, in one regard, yes, it does.
Right. Does being popular separate you from um, all sinners?
No.
Right. So if you're choosing the narrow path and you're trying to become redeemed, you're trying to overcome the bondages of sin.
Right.
Okay. Well, that is not the message that people want to hear now.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's more about justifying why you did it than overcoming the flaw.
So what makes the narrow path unique?
Let's say fundamentally is that on the narrow path, you're not trying to justify any particular platform or persuasion, but on a more practical level is that you are simply trying to overcome your own sin and help other people overcome their sin. So you're not attacking anybody, you're not degrading anybody, you're not putting yourself above anybody. Like somebody described it as one beggar trying to show another beggar where to find bread.
But you're also looking for the good in everybody's opinion.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so if you're a liberal and you're on the narrow path, you would look for the truth in a conservative. If you're a conservative, you're on the narrow path, you look for the truth in a liberal. You look for what's right and helpful and balanced in all situations.
Right.
And you don't tie it into a bias of who you're affiliated with or what your self-identity is.
Right.
Okay, now I'd be amiss to explain the biblical view of Christianity without going into some explanation of how in our country both parties missed the mark spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because the Christians embraced the Republicans, it started with the Democrats first, and then after a while, the Republicans caught up and surpassed the Democrats. Okay, but if you look at the impact the Democratic politicians have had on society that is contrary to God's will,
Mm-hmm.
you can go back. What the biggest thing that Democrats do that stifle God's will is they cause the isolation, they promote the fears, and they actually have destroyed the family unit with their values. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the Democrats believe, like we made tremendous progress on racism,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden they're saying everyone's racist, and they actually did cause racism, and they actually did believe that everyone's, like we need to pay reparations, that everyone's being discriminated against, that the cops were unjustly arresting everybody, and on, there were some instances where obviously this is true. There was some people that were falsely imprisoned, but it wasn't like every cop was necessarily racist. It wasn't that every black person that got arrested was a racist. With the women's movement, you look at a thing that says a girl gets 86 cents for every dollar that a man gets, right? And that this means that women are being discriminated against, and that they need to make more money than men in the workplace. And once again, this doesn't take into account that if a man had to take a few years off his career to have kids, this could impact him 14-20% as it does a woman. Women have often been the caretakers in society, which unfortunately doesn't pay as well. But more people tend to be more generous to women. So So by basically saying that this was all based on discrimination is then implying that men are harming women. And then by men harming women means that women have something to fear and that they have some justifiable cause and that they're a minority. And then so the liberals caused us to hate police officers. And then with the Me Too movement, there were men that were in power that took advantage of women, but there's this thing of I'm going to explain how the Republicans have done this with the government in a moment. But then by acting like every time a guy flirts with a girl, Jen flirts with someone out in public, that this is somehow some form of harassment, has basically caused men and women to not admire each other as much, and the wokeism culture. I saw a clip of Bill Maher this morning. There was this woman that was on some TV show that was getting married, and the guy didn't have an opinion on Black Lives Matter, and her sister was gay, and he didn't have an opinion on gay, so she called off the wedding. The cancel culture thing stemmed from liberals. Basically, every time they were bothered at someone, if they don't like someone, they say, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to avoid you. And then this has further caused the isolation to become worse. The liberals have promoted all these fears by claiming that everybody has been, discriminated against in some way or another. So if you're not standing on this cause, if you're not doing this thing, like Obama is the one that started some of the executive orders, started renaming things, like with the changing Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day, is implying that everybody was just a saint in the past except for Christopher Columbus and the white people, and that the Indians were just these loving people. Like when you actually read history, they would skin people alive that came across the border, they tortured people, they sacrificed their children. They weren't
Perfect.
They weren't perfect, no. And Christopher Columbus I don't believe was necessarily the world's worst criminal when he came. But then we're not allowed to make jokes because of liberals, like you can't say anything about a culture even if you're trying to be nice to them. So that they're killing the ability to converse with people. The liberals have killed the ability to have a happy family. They've broken down the structure of the family. They've taken, like, the idea of a man wanting to take care of a woman. They brainwash women into saying, I'm independent, I don't need you. And then this I don't need you thing causes the man to feel inadequate in approaching a woman. And then the woman doesn't want to make the man happy because every form of traditional gender is viewed as misogyny. And then this kills all of the happiness. So this is the effect that the liberals have had on society. Well, then the Christians get involved with the Republicans, and then they focus on what's popular. Then they put politics above the Bible. Then you get Trump, and then when you get Trump in there, you're basically promoting a platform of hatred and isolationism, which is going to destroy our government, our economy, and our way of life. So basically, the Christian model of the democracy that we had was based on freedom to practice religion, based on freedom where you don't have to rely on the government. So then Trump proposing all these tariffs is actually now the Republican platform, when it was Christian, was into small government. So now if you're going to propose all these tariffs, then you want the government to control every business. Well, another problem with the tariffs is then this creates corruption, just like what you see in Eastern Europe, in places like Russia, Ukraine, and other places. They have high tariffs and they have the government controlling industry, and then they have to pay bribes in order to have a business, which you don't need in America. And then the governments are demonizing the immigrants and then just simply deporting people without any due process. Okay, this flies in the face of Christian values, because as Christians we're supposed to be a light to the world. We're saying, because these people are bad, we want to get rid of them. That's not exactly what it means to be a light. as a Christian perspective, you want to be a light to the world, you want to redeem people. So then now the government is saying, I don't like your values, I want you gone. We, as a Christian country, we were known, like take back World War II, the Marshall Plan. We went to Europe and rebuilt every country, even the countries that attacked us, and took nothing in return, and didn't try to own part of it. Now, that's the Christian way, is to
Right.
love your neighbor as yourself, and then we profited from this. All these countries helped prop us up to be the most successful country in the history of nations. Now we're saying to like Ukraine, okay, we'll help you a little bit, but you need to give us mineral rights to your country. We need to get something from this help, which is kind of the opposite of the Christian way. They said when that we're no longer wanting to help other countries in need, or which goes against the people in need, which is part of what the Republicans are causing. The Republicans are also not wanting to see other countries benefit from our trade, thinking that somehow we're going to get richer from this, but we actually got wealthier from helping other countries build up their factories and build up their trade. It ended up benefiting us. It gave us more access to more natural resources, gave us more access to more labor, but now we're saying we don't want that to hurt ourselves. And so the interesting thing is that, so we talk about how the liberals have destroyed our personal lives, but at least with the personal lives, we could try to find some people that could possibly, although we've for the most part failed, we could find some people that wanted to live a happy personal life. Now, the Republicans are destroying the social order of the government, and basically letting the world know that we don't have Christian values, and then that we're supporting a president that was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, that's been bankrupt 8 times, that is a compulsive liar, that basically has no humility whatsoever, that always blames other people for the problems, and then all the Christians are saying, this is a great idea, right? Well, not that a president should have the same exact qualifications of a minister, but if you look at the qualifications of a minister, if you're a Christian and you want to rally behind somebody, they should at least be somewhat close to the ministerial qualifications, which are a husband of one wife, someone that doesn't drink, which I guess you could say Trump doesn't drink, but someone that's sober, that's serious, that that upholds God's word, that
His reputation.
right, and so basically now the Republicans are the conservatives are presenting an image of selfishness, that we need to leverage our power for gain, even if it costs us, and we no longer care about the rights of people that we feel that are in our way, and we're no longer and we feel that it's cost us a lot of money to actually try to help the poor people in the world, to help needy people in the world, and so on and so forth, okay? And so then the liberals have supported the legalization of drugs, the legalization of gay marriage, the legalization of abortion. Then the Republicans are now supporting deporting people without due process, ignoring the other branches of government, illegally creating problems with we have agreements with people all around the world. We're reneging on all of our agreements. We're reneging on human rights. So then you say, as a Christian, if you believe in honesty and integrity, then you wouldn't support what the Republicans are doing, right? If you're a Christian and you believe in traditional family and purity, then you would not have the values that the Democrats have.
Right.
Okay? So therefore, as a society now, people are trying to identify with one side or the other. And unfortunately, it's not, one side doesn't have all the answers. This is why, you need the Bible. This is why you need God. Okay. So right now, if you're a Democrat, Trump gives you a whole smorgasbord of things to attack and to condemn because he's the worst leader that the Republicans have ever had. Okay. And if you're a Republican, you can justify all of Trump's flaws by saying, I'm not into gay rights, I'm not into the transgender agenda, I'm not into wokeism, right? And so as long as you just look at what you don't like on the other side, then it justifies you on your side.
Yeah.
What about this idea to you Christians? His kingdom is not of this world. His values are not political. It's not a political warfare. It's a spiritual warfare. And we need to be separated from the world.
Yep.
So we need to try to help people in need the way the liberals do, but do it with godly values.
Right.
And we need to condemn sin the way the conservatives do, but do it with love and not hatred. So
Right.
like if you so basically we have flaws. If we love each other, we're close enough, and we actually present God's truth and we inspire each other to become perfect in God's image. We're not going to do it by hating each other and condemning each other for our flaws.
Yep.
We need to condemn the sin, but not condemn the sinner. Love the sinner, hate the sin. We need to hate the effect that sin has. So what liberals do is they try to love the sinner and justify the sin. Okay? And what conservatives, basically do is say the sinner is an attack on me and not recognizing that they're sinners too. So therefore, you can't get caught up in either persuasion and be redeemed and have, a mind of God. You have to be open-minded, because if you get caught up on the liberal side, then you're always going to be angry with what the conservatives are doing with their values. And then your values are going to be compromised because they're not holy and they're not good. And if you're a conservative now, you might forget that. I heard a speech on the radio from Ronald Reagan in January. I forgot the specific day in January, but it was in January of 1989 when he was saying, I'm so proud to be an American. He says, you can go to France, but you can't be a Frenchman. You can go such and such a place. But he says, but you can come to America and be an American. I think we might have lost sight that the American dream is that of an immigrant coming to America and having a house, a car, and a life, and being an American.
The melting pot.
The melting pot. And it's funny, the conservatives were always promoted this. They were against tariffs. They were against communists, right? They were in favor of defending the world and helping the little guy. And so it's kind of strange how things change. But if you're a conservative now, you're going to forget about all of the values that conservatives had for the past century, and you're going to change it to this totalitarianism mindset that has nothing to do with conservatism. And if you're a liberal, you're going to take all of your values about caring for people and helping people and lacing it with complete hypocrisy by having absolutely no standards of purity and righteousness whatsoever. So therefore, this is why the kingdom is not of this world. Is that you can't become successful in either party while overcoming these things. So if you pick the narrow path, then you could say, okay, the liberals are doing a good thing, that they want to help the poor, that they actually want to honor our deals with the trading partners, but maybe they're doing a bad thing by embracing all immoral values. And then you can say, okay, well, the conservatives are doing a few good things in that they are trying to end these the stifleness of wokeism. They're trying to cut back on some regulations that make it too expensive to buy houses or to own a business, but their values are actually contrary to everything that is good, everything that is proper, and everything that we fought for. You can be open-minded if you don't get married to one political persuasion and see good in both sides.
Yeah.
But you cannot be redeemed through politics. You cannot legislate redemption. You cannot legislate salvation. And basically, man is made in the image of God. So all persuasions have some good in them and have some bad in them. They all need to be redeemed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I did this in the backwards order of how I planned. Okay. Okay, so now the next one is, we're continuing the theme, separation from the world. So if you go to James chapter 4, give me 1 second to catch up to you. Okay, I'll be right there. James chapter 4. Look at verse 4. Let's do chapter 5. It says, "Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God." Okay, and if you turn to 1 John chapter 2. Starting in verse 15. Says, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but of the world. And the world passeth away, and also the lust thereof. But he that, hold on a second. The world passeth away, and the lust there. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." Okay. Okay, so can you be a big influencer of the world and be separated from it at the same time? Do you think this message that we're putting on YouTube right now is going to be as big as Mr. Beast?
Doesn't seem like it's going to be as big as anybody.
Like you said, we're having about 6 or 7 people that we don't know that watch it every week, which is good, which makes it worth doing.
Right.
But it's not.
Yeah. We got no K on the end of the number.
There's no K. No, we haven't made it to double digits on the last 2 yet. We were close. In totality, we were 9, but I know of 3, so that's why I'm saying 6.
Okay.
Okay, now, so is persecution a mark of being well received by the world?
Not typically.
Did Jesus get persecuted because he hated people?
No.
Biblical persecution is based on love. Like if you love somebody strong enough, sometimes it brings up their insecurities.
Right.
It contradicts what they're trying to deny.
Yeah.
And then they're conscious because they're made in God's image. They kind of know that you're a loving person. They know what you're saying is true, and they don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
So then the process of not accepting it causes them to lash out at you, not like you, avoid you, and think bad of you. That's what causes biblical persecution.
Right.
It wouldn't happen in heaven because we wouldn't be born with a sin nature. Okay? So does worldly values, as we just described, does the political values of the world help promote holiness?
No, I mean, it's usually, somebody's selfishness that's being promoted.
Right. So as we say, the Democrats are trying to reach out to people but justifying their flaws. When you're justifying their flaws, you're not being holy.
Right.
The Republicans are trying to say, your sin hurts me, you need to be deported. I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah, right. But the point is, I want everybody that thinks like me to like me.
Right,
And
but
be
holiness would not cause you to want to attack people that you feel are
different.
hurting your rights.
Yeah.
And then holiness wouldn't cause you to want to justify everybody regardless of what they do.
Right.
Right? Is self-denial a good technique for running for office?
No, especially not if you need like lots of campaign donations to get elected.
I don't think Donald Trump was focused on self-denial, just to throw that out there.
No?
Right. And,
Yeah.
so
Respect your opinion.
so the mystery of Christianity is self-denial. That self-denial is the key to redemption. Self-denial comes from humility. That if you deny yourself, you become happier, you become redeemed, and you have a more meaningful life. There's no other religion that actually teaches it to that degree that Christianity does, and it is contrary to what creates success in the world.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, does anything... Is there anything that does connect you more to the world than being a politician?
Not really. I mean, a close second might be an entertainer.
Yes, I would agree. Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's more connected.
So if our duty as Christians is to be separated from the world, there's nothing you can do to be a more connected, more impactful on the world than being a politician. That's the whole point of politics.
Right.
Is to have an impact on the world. Not that we as Christians don't have impact on the world. We want to try to redeem the world.
Right.
But in terms of worldly values, the heartbeat of worldly values is found in politics.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
So if as a Christian, if you want to be separated from the world, then you cannot be a politician. And if you try, you will not succeed. If you do succeed, you have to change your Christian values.
You gotta compromise.
Right. So you may be able to succeed in business while being a Christian because, like I said, in my business, we actually changed the bidding process so that honesty works. Right? But this is part of the reason I'm a small business, though, is because I'm delivering the production.
Yeah.
Like in some ways, I have to produce twice as much in order to be honest.
Yep.
And but regardless of which, honesty works less in the political world than it works in the business world, and it is not the most successful way to succeed in the business world. Okay, the best way is what I meant to say. And so therefore, when you actually understand how the world operates and how to become popular and what actually works, then it should be crystal clear that we are not of this world, that we are pilgrims on this earth, that we need to be separate and not touch an unclean thing, and that we need to walk on the narrow path. Broad is the way that leadeth to life. So in the post-Christian era, most people try to identify with a certain group and then look for a consensus of what's popular in the group. That mindset is the complete opposite of the narrow path. That is called looking for the broad way. So whatever way is the broadest is what politicians do. It's how you win an election. It's how you become popular. The narrow path, look for the truth. Look for what creates goodness, virtue, happiness, and sincerity, and tie your thoughts into the majority of virtue, the majority of goodness, the majority of truth, rather than the broad way of what does everybody think. Trying to subject your thoughts to being like everybody else, thinking like everyone else, doing like everyone else, valuing what everyone values, is basically the complete opposite of focusing on the narrow path. The narrow path does tie into separation from the world, does not tie into politics. So we have one more political message, which we will do next week, and we will close here. Dear God, I pray that everyone here learns the narrow path, learns humility, learns to be open-minded, and that we all become part of your remnant, and we overcome the leaven of politics. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.